You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason The Interviews, the series where I interview a wide range of celebrities and find interesting life stories. I'm like a modern day Michael Parkinson, but a lot smaller. My guest today is best known for working in the world of Jim Henson. It's one and only Jocelyn Stevenson.
Son.
Um,
Hello!
um, so we shall start at the very beginning because Julie Andrews once said it was a good place to start. How did you get into the industry I call media?
How did I get into the industry? Okay. I first saw Sesame Street after I'd graduated from Stanford University and was teaching in a daycare center. And it was kind of place where all the teachers, we did everything. We cleaned up, we did everything, right. So I had the duty of cleaning up at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and there were some kids still left that were waiting for their parents to come. And we didn't always turn the TV on, but I did turn the TV on, and there was Sesame Street, and I had
Yeah.
never seen it. I was sweeping, and I actually remember just stopping sweeping because I was completely taken. I thought,
Mm.
whoa, they're doing for 9 million
Yeah.
kids what we're trying to do for 30. So then I ended up, ultimately, this was in California, and I ended up going to New York,
Mm.
and I went to the Children's Television Workshop with a piece of paper that was my CV, which
Yeah.
really didn't exist at the time. I could practically hear them ripping it up as
Yeah.
they put it. Anyway, it ended up that I knew a cousin of mine knew somebody who
Mm.
worked there for the publishing
Yeah.
department, and I ultimately got a job there as a secretary. So that's
Mm.
how I got in the industry with working on the Sesame Street magazine.
Yeah. And you mentioned Sesame Street. Why do you think that it captured? Why do you think you were hooked on it as well as the kids in the room?
Well, just because I'd never seen entertainment used
Mm.
in that way to
Yeah.
educate kids. I mean, because it was, and the Sesame Street was, they actively tried. That's why
Yeah.
they hired the Muppets, because they wanted parents involved,
Yeah.
knowing from all their research that co-viewing
Mm.
means the kids learn more. And so, yeah, the kids were all like, but I was even worse. My mouth hung open for the whole time. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe, and that's why and it was for young kids,
Yeah.
that they could get across these concepts, very simple concepts to
Yeah.
young kids, but in such a funny way that a grown-up would be amused.
Yeah. And
And
I think that similar to the UK equivalent, I would say Blue Peter, it
yeah,
spanned generations.
yeah,
Why do you think that it's lasted so long and still had so many loyal viewers so many years later?
because I think it's just like you say, it spanned generations, but also the kids, like, well, Sesame Street was for sort of 2 to 6, right?
Mm.
Let's say, and that audience keeps
Yeah.
renewing, so you are always having new kids coming in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And on a like a sort of a similar path, shall we say, but less like explainable to the fact that yes, a monster that eats cookies you can sort of try and work out the logistics of how that's possible. But these creatures you cannot explain how they would be possible if they weren't puppets. But what
yes.
was it like working on, I would say the comical, some people would say the early morning show, The Hoops.
Oh, the Hoobs. You would say comical. That's
Yeah.
good because you saw what we were trying to do. I worked on it in the beginning. I
Mm.
helped sort of develop it.
Yeah.
And but we were also doing this show called the Mop Top Shop at the same
Yeah.
time. And so I was much more involved with that. Worked with the Hoobs, and then turned it over to my friends Melly Buse and Mark Seal,
Mm.
who took it up. But the Hoobs is, yes, is officially hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's face it. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. And when you hear people talk about it, especially in the UK, because Channel 4, which is the channel it aired on, didn't really do kids. It didn't have like it wasn't Channel 5 where it had like a
No,
kids block.
no,
But what it had done is it meant that people that were up early such as myself as a small child, obviously, and my father as an adult, were up early. You remember that time when you're either watching Frasier, Raymond, or Cheers, which
What you
is
mean,
on.
like reruns?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was on all the time and still to this very day on Channel 4. And it is one of those shows where you can then bond with the parents that are up at that
Yeah.
time getting ready because some people like putting on the telly and you don't really not everyone wants to watch the news or whatever ITV are trying to get at. So putting that on, why do you think that it captured so much joy, not just for the kids that were up at like whatever o'clock, but also the parents that were getting ready for work?
Well, it's like you say, it's that double thing. There were double, that parents could watch it because it was funny. And
Yeah,
there were bits that were secretly written for the parents
yeah,
without ever trying to undermine a kid's understanding, right?
yeah,
And what I'm going to do now, Tom, after this, is
yeah,
I'm going to go back to the people who did the hoops because
yeah.
I know them very well and tell them what you've said
Ah.
about your experience because that's absolutely what they were looking for.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that I'm probably gonna say their name wrong, but I'm gonna attempt it. The Tiddly and I think it's the no, I don't know what they're called now. The random people that ran the engine that you would never think that you would have little people inside an engine of a truck.
that's
And it
right.
always makes me, after a while, it does make you think, because as a child, you're not too sure that the puppets, you think the real, you've got that imagination thinking the real. It would freak you out after a while because you could be driving in a similar sized vehicle going, it's a lot smaller than it is on the telly.
Yeah.
But why do you think that that's why it succeeded in that sense? Because it didn't just have your normal like activities of a children's show, but it also had like another level of doing things that
Well,
some of
just
the other shows
yeah.
wouldn't have done.
What we always say is that the best thing about writing for that age
Yeah,
group is that you can imagine anything and they and
yeah,
speaking of people like you when you were that age will go with it.
yeah,
And so as long as you keep, as long as you don't destroy the logic somehow,
yeah,
as long as you keep it logical in,
mm,
even in a kid
yeah,
way, it works. And
yeah,
that's what's really fun. It's fun to write.
yeah.
And also then it's fun. Thank you. I'm going to also
Yeah.
give back the feedback that it worked for you as a kid.
Yeah. And something else that was as it's interesting when for me personally, I'm really into the history of TV and when you see international versions of things, it makes it more fascinating. And what's really interesting is one of the things that you worked on, and we'll focus more on the original version for now, is that you worked on the brilliant Fraggle Rock, but what's even more interesting is when you talk to people that are of that age that will have watched it when it was first on, not reruns, they wouldn't have, especially in the UK, they didn't know that there was another version in America where it wasn't a lighthouse. Why do you think that there was so many different variations of the humans in the original Fraggle Rock?
I can tell you exactly why. I mean, it was a decision that came out of the fact that the Muppet Show
Yeah.
was in 120 different countries, right? So that Jim Henson had this ability to have an international production.
Mm,
Now they knew working with Sesame Street
yeah.
that international versions were very hard to do
Yeah.
because you had, to build the street. I mean, it was very American, so it was hard to do.
Yeah.
So they came up with the idea wanting to do a kids TV show that would be international but
Mm,
wouldn't cost any foreign broadcasters a lot of money to make. Okay,
yeah.
so what if we have a little bit of each show that's done locally with a
Mm,
local, like here it was the lighthouse worker and
yeah.
the lighthouse keeper, and in the States it was the doc in his workshop,
Yeah.
there was a baker in France. I mean, there was a few other countries.
Mm,
You have a bit that's
mm,
human, very low on. You wouldn't have to build your own
yeah.
puppets. Sprocket's the only one really, and Gobo when he comes in to get his letter. But then the middle of it is this amazing Muppet
Yeah.
production that can be dubbed.
Yeah.
So we did that on purpose because it would make it not to just have an export,
Yeah.
a show that's exported and you dub it or whatever you have to do,
Yeah.
but one that was actually created to be an international. In fact, when we first started working on it, we called it the International Children's Show.
Yeah.
And because it was going to be an international
Yeah.
children's show, that's when Jim said to all of us, "Okay, I want you guys to create a show that's going to help stop war."
Yeah.
You go,
Uh,
"Okay, Jim." as Jerry Jewell, who was head writing it, said, Jim, oh, that's great, Jim. Do you want that by Thursday?
Wow.
So that, that whole idea, well done,
Yeah.
seeing that because it made it that was the point of it.
Yeah. And I think that what it does is when you watch, like, let's say any show that's dubbed, I, for me, the dub doesn't always work because the mouth movements never always match, and you
Well, with puppets,
but with puppets,
especially
it's
English.
quite simple, and then having the local version makes it so that you're not like you understand what's going on. So if you watch another similar show, well, not similar, but in a similar time, like Monkey, it
Right.
when you watch it, because that's a show about I think it's either Chinese or Japanese, but it was dubbed in the UK, and
Yeah.
when you watch it, you can tell that it's dubbed, and I think that sort of brings you out of the world. But with Fraggle Rock, you can be in the world because it's
Because you had
easier.
Fulton Mackay on this, on this
Yeah,
side of the ocean,
yeah,
speaking, normal English. And
yeah,
then you had basically it was Canadian version because we filmed it up in
yeah,
Canada, but the
yeah,
American version with our American guy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And
yeah,
you're in it.
yeah. And what was the process like then from making the newer version, and why was the decision not taken to use the same sort of localized human sections?
Well, I think it was a whole different thing because it was Apple that picked it up and worked with the Henson Company to do it, and I think Apple's everywhere.
Yeah,
What the idea of because in those days, back in those, you had to sell things in,
yeah,
right, to get them into international markets. Well, now it's all sort of the same thing,
yeah,
right? So I hadn't, and that, yeah, and so they've done that what they've done, right?
yeah,
And um, yeah, and it was interesting because we didn't have to think so much about what it would be like to
yeah,
translate, to translate the doc bits into other countries and all
yeah,
that. So
yeah.
yeah.
And why do you think that the new version is still as successful as the original? Is it because the show in itself is universal and can just be easily attainable and you can easily get into it? Or is it because they have the original version attached on the service so that kids can get into the original version and understand why it's such a beloved show?
Oh, that's an interesting question, but all I can tell you is that when I worked on the Apple version,
Mm,
I was working here from the UK. The writer's room was in America, in LA. The time difference was a bit staggering. I
yeah,
mean, the day work starting with them would be at 6 o'clock at night our time. Forget it. I mean, I was good for a couple, maybe 3 hours, right?
yeah,
But what was interesting was working with that group of writers, and we took the stories to
mm,
places where we never would have
yeah,
imagined when we were originally doing the series. And what it made me appreciate was actually how flexible the series is.
mm,
And so I think you're right about saying, there's big themes,
yeah,
and yeah, and it has survived. It's very satisfying that it
yeah,
survived. I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. When I tell people I worked on it, particularly from the beginning, it's like, whoa,
yeah,
And back then we had no idea if it was ever going to be successful. That's what happens, isn't it?
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very satisfying now. How well it's done on Apple.
Yeah. And I think what makes it successful is it's not just because the show is so good, it's also because I think the fact that the Apple's streaming service is easier to get hold of than
Yeah.
others because if you buy a new phone, if you're spending that money on a phone, you get a few months free of the service so that you get to enjoy it. Do you think that's another reason why it's popular is because it's an easy show people can get into because a lot more kids might have access
Access
to
to it.
that.
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It's a good point.
Yeah.
I like to think, they watch it anyway because it's excellent.
Yeah.
Or like you say, maybe they get the 3 months free or whatever and say, oh, wait a minute, that's great,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that Apple do a good job of making kids shows. If you look at like Netflix, there's like millions, and you're there for 4 hours trying to choose one, and you end up pumping for something that you've seen 12 times on terrestrial TV. But I think what Apple does is because there's such small sort of lists of them, it means that they've had time to take care to make sure that that is as good as what you would see on your terrestrial channel. Do you think that that's why Apple was the perfect platform for the
Yeah.
show?
But they all I can say is they were great to work with.
Yeah,
I wasn't working right with the broadcaster
mm,
in this, version. More I did that more when we were doing the original one.
yeah,
But no, they were great and they put a lot of money into it and the sets are amazing. But then it's mostly like, it's like you say about Netflix, it's hard. They really supported it.
yeah,
So, you got their advertising support,
yeah,
so that's
yeah.
it. They were a perfect partner for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what it shows is that kids still, after so many years, still love puppets. Because
Yes.
you don't see as many on TV as I would like, but the ones that you do see are like adored by children. Not even just children, adults now adore them because they're like, well, we need to help support that to make sure it's still knocking about. So if we watch that just to have a gun to see what they're into, then we're still supporting that industry. And on a similar track, why do you think that children's entertainment, especially on TV, is more important now than it's ever been?
It's more important now because there's so much that for kids to pay attention to.
Mm,
And there's so much of it. And so that's feeling like you want to keep people to create shows that, well, it's like with Sesame Street,
yeah,
for instance. We were always researching what kids needed, what they,
mm,
how could we fill this need?
yeah,
Not just let's have five characters and we can sell a lot of toys.
yeah,
So it's really important to have meaningful kids entertainment.
yeah,
That's what I think as part of their diet. I
yeah,
mean, we all like eating, cupcakes now and then too, but
yeah,
you still have to eat your salad.
yeah,
Am I making sense in what I'm saying?
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
also really important because kids think differently than
mm,
we do. And
yeah,
to give programming that understands how they think and where they are in their developmental level is really important.
yeah,
I love working. I don't, people often ask me in my career, don't you want to do anything for grown-ups? No, it's
yeah,
just not as interesting.
yeah,
Kids are a really interesting audience.
yeah. And you can do more fun. And if you look at the history of kids' TV, especially from where I'm coming from as in the UK angle, you can sort of see that the adults that are on these shows are having more fun than you would see them. So it's like you're watching, let's say, you watch Sat in the Kitchen on BBC One. You see like the board because he's just going to be cooking for a few minutes and no advert, so it sort of just makes it really like a really long drawn out something stirring. But then if you watch like, for example, Saturday Mashup, which is a clever example. That is, they're all driving in go-karts, but the go-karts are toilets, or they're trying to collect toilet roll, and the lower the points, the lower the number, the more points they get, or they're going to slime someone dressed as Ant and Dec. But you wouldn't get that on Adult TV. Maybe Sunday Brunch, where he's doing bingo, but it's people's fears. So going to fear of fruit magnets. But you can sort of see why do you think that that's why children's TV is so much fun? Because it's not just the kids at home that are having fun, it's the adults and it's the people on screen that are visibly having fun.
Yeah, because they're touching the kid in themselves. Have any of us ever grown up? No, I can tell you for a fact I haven't.
Yeah,
And I don't think you have either. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's a high compliment.
I definitely haven't grown up. Just earlier, I was making a song about types of cheeses where instead of singing the words, I just said different types of cheeses for 3 minutes.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. I'm definitely not grown up.
No.
Um, and that proves it. And one of the things you've done in your career that I think that has lasted the test of time because there's so many different variations of it. There's not just the TV series, but there's also like DVDs and there's other aspects, and there's really bad kid drawings of the said character. But I'll get on to that in a minute. What was it like working in the world of the purple dinosaur, Barney?
Barney. That was a revelation for me
Yeah,
because having worked on Sesame Street, we all sort of thought of Barney, which came along and was a huge success and everything. It's like, that's, whatever. And
yeah,
I think it was came partly out of jealousy.
yeah,
But then I had the opportunity to work with Barney because I started working with Hit Entertainment and
mm,
they took over Barney.
yeah.
then off I went to Dallas to meet them. And what I got to first of all, the team that was working on
Mm.
Barney was just like the Henson team,
Yeah.
real family feeling. They cared so much about it. They loved it so much. I mean, I did, and I said to them all, I thought the puppet really not a very good puppet, but
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah.
It was they performed. They were committed. They were
Yeah.
really. It was really. But the other thing is, then they took me to see. They took me to a Barney musical show,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, there were 3-year-olds in the aisle
Wow.
as if this was, you know, Bruce Springsteen for a certain age group,
Yeah.
and that's when I got it. I write, well, Barney, duh, Barney is for them.
Yeah.
And it so connects with them. So it was, yeah, I mean, just in the same way, yes. Barney didn't work to connect so hard with the grown-ups. They
Yeah.
didn't have to. They really connected with the kids. And one of the writers, a guy called Steve White, who wrote a lot of the Barney, I
Mm.
just thought he was a genius because he
Yeah.
could do that. He could write stuff that connected to 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, and I think that what it's done to in sort of an aspect is that it showcases that you can have this imagination. And what I really quite liked about it was the fact that the it was all stemmed from what kids know best, which is a cuddly toy. A lot of kids have. I'm gonna call them teddies. Technically, they're probably called something else now. But yeah, it's the aspect of kids will then have that teddy and they'll go, oh, it's Barney. Or in my experience of at nursery drawing a picture that's turned out to be squiggles and thinking it's Barney saying to me, mother, make sure it doesn't come out that painting. But it looks nothing resembling Barney, so you wouldn't have, unless I'd said the word Barney, you would have no clue what I was on about, nor what that painting was on about, because it was a like that big drawing of just squiggly lines, not even in purple, in
They weren't even
orange
in
and blue.
purple.
Yeah,
That's funny.
it makes it worse. And why do you think that shows like Barney has been able to stick in people's memories and be able to generate like fondness of their lives, not just sat watching it, but remember things around it?
Yeah, just from what you say, because they so much enjoyed it. They were connecting to that
Yeah,
point. They could remember what it did to their
yeah.
imagination. I mean, you're the perfect example of why it worked so well. I don't know why you're asking me the question.
Yeah. And why do you think the franchise is still so successful now with the fact that people are still into it? And it was popular enough for it to be rebooted in a CGI attempt.
I really have had I've had nothing to do with it once
Mm.
I left Hit. So I have to tell you, I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention
Yeah.
to it. And I don't know, is it on here in the UK, Barney?
It is, from what I gather, and I might be wrong with this, I think it's on Sky Kids.
Oh, right. Okay.
Uh,
Because when my grandkids were that age, then
yeah,
it was all Peppa Pig, right?
yeah,
So it was, and yeah, and what's it, Octonauts and things like
yeah,
that. So I didn't know, but I would have thought, oh, well, I've seen Barney and
yeah,
probably not
yeah,
watched it, but I would have had to find it. And that's
yeah,
why I didn't. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that in I think the reason how I stumbled across Barney, and I think that a lot of people might have had a similar experience with some other kids shows, is that at one point newspapers, and I can't remember which one, was giving out free DVDs.
Oh,
It was
right.
like a couple of episodes of it mostly was hit entertainment shows
Yeah.
like your Bob the Builder and
Probably the Builder. Right.
etc. And that way forward. And I think that that's what also helped it to become a hit in the
Yes.
UK because
So
your grandparents or your parents were buying the magazine to learn about who got married to who and what wars began in what country, and all you're bothered about is finding out what's happened to Bob the Builder this week if you're not able to watch it live. Obviously, it's done some building. You've not
therefore, it was
done
a
it
very
now.
successful marketing. It was
Yeah.
very, yes.
Yeah, and one of the things you worked on, and a lot of the things you've worked on in your career has the success of it, not just the shows itself, but the theme tune to be stuck in your head for quite a while, or in my case, so long that you had to attach it to your computer so you could press a button to play the theme tune. But what was it like working on the brilliant, both in the show itself and in the incredible theme tune for Charlie Chalk?
Oh, Charlie Chalk. Um, Now you got the themes going through my head. It was to work with Ivor Wood,
Yeah.
genius, a genius in stop motion animation. It was the first time I'd had any experience with it. Um, we just had really fun. It was really, and I was 13 episodes. That was it,
yeah,
right? Because I had to look it up. And you said, what was it like to write two episodes? No, no, I did the whole series. And it was a great team. It was really fun. And then it
yeah,
was also just stop motion animation does my head in.
yeah,
These people that can just sit there,
yeah,
move something, camera, move
yeah,
something, take it. It was funny, and we just had a really good time.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and you mentioned stop motion animators, and there's a really interesting documentary about Aardman. But it's the end bit that's really interesting. At the end of that documentary, they say that a film takes 3 hours to make in 3 hours, 3 years, and they mention the film. I think it's like the cave. I don't know what it's called now, but it's a football, but cavemen playing football.
yeah,
And the fact that that took 3 years.
yeah,
Do you think that that's why stop motion is so beautiful? Because you can take that amount of time and people are willing to wait because you're going to see some beautiful like outcomes.
you have to. It has to take that long.
Yeah,
Imagine you're filming. How do you film, a stop motion
yeah,
puppet throwing a football? And
yeah,
how do you make that work? I mean,
yeah,
it's like, as I said, it does my head in. And but stop motion, it looks so beautiful. And when
yeah,
things get changed to CG, I find that it's not the same.
yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I
It's
do. It's
Yeah,
because I think that sometimes it makes it look like really weird. You're thinking, oh, that's not what I remember. It's like Bob the Builder when he went CGI, he got a longer face, he got taller and longer and gained a couple of friends. I thought, ooh, it's
yeah.
a
Also,
little bit
also with
creepy.
that whole thing, because again, I left Hit after that
Yeah,
because that would not have been a decision I would have been happy about. Let's put it that way.
yeah,
Because in in stop motion, you
yeah,
can show somebody digging something.
yeah,
Okay, it takes, but it actually is things interact with
yeah,
the environment, right? And
yeah,
it's a builder. And I thought, how are you going to make that really work in CG? So
yeah.
I'm glad to
And
hear you say what you're saying.
yeah. And what's interesting is that if you look at Charlie Talk and similar shows of that era now, it still looks as beautiful as it did then because stop motion doesn't the way it looks, the film might have like, aged a bit. You can probably tell it's not as new, but it still feels as fresh. Do you reckon that that's why kids are able and people are able to now to be able to watch it now and not really notice anything up with it?
Yeah, because it's just being it works. Yeah, and Postman Pat was another one they did
Yeah.
too. So but Aardman, I mean, the Kings of, of
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
it look really, and it's that sensation I think you mentioned earlier was that you're
Mm.
watching it going, how did they do
Yeah,
that? And it's
yeah,
like there's a sort of element of magic to it,
it is.
which I
Yeah,
think is
and
appealing too.
yeah, and you mentioned Postman Pat there, and what's really funny is I don't know if you know, but there's a couple of comedians that talk a lot about being parents, and their favorite thing to do whenever Postman Pat's brought up on any panel show possible, because that's when they complain to the nation that he shouldn't be having a helicopter, because he's now got a helicopter, and people wonder why the post office are running out of money because they're giving him a helicopter. And I think, and you look back at it going, yeah, I don't think he needs to be a special delivery. So he was all right, just shooting around and beep
Postman
beep.
Pat, and it's
Yeah,
it's the black and white cat.
yeah,
Why
yeah.
do you need a helicopter?
Yeah, it'll be a saber-toothed tiger now. And no longer. But but I think that stop motion sort of brings out the wonder. It's like if you listen to the radio, there's a lot of scope you can do with it because it's arching. But I think in stop motion you can also have a similar scope because all you need is someone that is excellent at modeling, and obviously you need the photographers and everyone else. But to make the idea work, which is probably a lot cheaper, is make sure the sets are brilliant. And one thing that has excellent sets uh, and I think another excellent theme tune, but a title that's probably really easy to misspell because there's too many B's in the title. Well, what was it like working on the Rubber Dubbers?
I love the rubber dubbers. Here come the rubber dubbers. Yes, okay, yes.
Yeah,
Um, Again, it was,
mm,
that everybody always says with animation, you
yeah,
can't do bath, you
yeah,
can't do water. And so here we were doing water because
yeah,
it was challenging and fun, and the characters were funny. And it, what was it like? It was just great. It was hot animation. I loved working with
yeah,
them, and it was really fun. That
yeah,
I mean, that sounds just lame to say it was really fun, but it's true. It was
yeah,
really,
yeah,
and yeah, and the stories I like I mean, I was on the writing team of it, or I think I was head writing that, and we it was just this whole idea of imagination and slipping into your imagination,
yeah,
those imaginary worlds, and so it was just so much fun
yeah.
because you think bath toys, how's that going to work? They're not going to get out of the bath. That's not very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah. And you could go on so many adventures as a
Yes.
starfish. And I think that at that time, what makes, and a lot of people, well, they say that now because they feel like it, but a lot of people say that there's a Children in Need. Peter Kay did that Children in Need song where he had all the stop motion people. I mean, you didn't really need Sooty in it because he can't speak, so I do think that it was probably a bad move trying to get him into the actual single, but having him on the music video makes perfect sense. But I think that people say it's like their version of Avengers Endgame, like all the people from all the different
Oh,
universes. It was the multiverse of
wow.
madness, if you will.
Yeah.
And why do you think that there's not as much stop motion on TV now as the one was at that time?
Because it's expensive.
Yeah,
It's hard to do it properly is expensive. Um, I really do think it just comes down not lack of imagination.
yeah,
It's just hard to, and in kids TV right now is hard to get
yeah,
things. And you can't do stop motion with AI.
yeah.
Ugh,
And and why do you think that children's TV is on this spiral of going downwards, or where, such as in the UK, having CITV clause? Why do you think that why do you think entertainment is the one that's losing the most money at a faster pace?
they're not losing the most money. It's mostly because um, we don't live in a culture that just honors our children.
Yeah,
We have trouble with education, making sure that that's properly funded, that
yeah,
teachers are properly paid. I mean, it's just part of our whole
yeah,
cultural and the kids entertainment and kids TV falls into suffering because people just don't care enough.
yeah. And
I don't even think that's a controversial thing to say.
I think that when you think about people might say, "Oh, TV's rotting the children's brain," and blah blah blah. But I think that, which is blah blah, mind you. But I think that what makes it interesting is that when you think of at school, you would watch. Sometimes if the teacher feels like, "Oh, you're going to learn about a Florence Nightingale," for example, they would play because the BBC used to do. Well, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have separate like dramas that were for schools. Like I think it's like. I don't know what it was called, but it was like a time traveling grandpa that took his children to Florence Nightingale, and you learn about it. Why do you think that that type of children's shows aren't as in favour, if you will, as much? Why do you think that entertainment and education aren't really being utilised on TV in a school sense?
I just think a lack of wanting to do it. You know that
Mm,
there used to be, BBC used to have fantastic
yeah,
BBC Learning, all of
yeah,
those, and then I remember when they stopped being they used to be part of the BAFTA Awards, Kids
yeah,
Awards, and then no, and it's money again. I'm
yeah,
sorry, Tom. I think it does come just down to financing it,
yeah,
and there's so many other resources, and why do we need
yeah,
that kind of thinking? I think. Um, but then, well, I should say I could segue, but I shouldn't do that. Let you segue. Now, I was going to segue into the
yeah,
Magic School Bus,
yeah,
which is like Sesame Street was but it was for an older age group. But it's a
yeah,
program that combines the entertainment and the learning. And there are
mm,
also people that sometimes think, in the broadcast world, you're
yeah,
either being educational or you're being entertaining.
mm,
No, the most fun is everything's
yeah,
education to a little kid.
yeah,
So the most fun is combining the two things.
yeah,
So that was again, Magic School Bus is another one totally focused on
yeah.
science, but it was entertaining.
It was. And I think that even if you're watching something for pure entertainment purposes, as a viewer, you're learning about the industry, you're learning about the media, you're learning about, oh, there's someone out there filming this, you learn
Yes,
all
true.
the different techniques. So no matter if it's not, oh, here's 4 plus 4, which I'm not going to answer what that is. But you learned about, oh, yeah, there's a camera operator's camera in that. And when you watch I think Blue Peter is a really good example when they've done behind the scenes and you learn about these things. They're not it's not technically an educational program, but it's entertaining the viewers enough to go, oh, I want to do that job. But
Yeah,
with the Magic School Bus, it was that it's another aspect of it's a side of the way of entertaining people in a new way. It's a science. If you're at
right.
school, you might not always be interested in science. Like biology might not be the most fascinating thing. But when you watch a bunch of school kids similar age to yourself going on a magical journey inside,
A
let's
plant
say,
or
for example, a
something.
human
Yeah,
body, for
yeah.
example, they learn more about it. Why do you think that that was a good strategy for not just entertainment but education in itself?
Because it's entertaining.
Yeah,
Because that there were we would get letters from parents who there was one I remember, a kid,
yeah,
but their kid was 3, so
yeah,
very much below the age group. It was basically a magic school was sort of 7 to 11.
yeah.
This kid was 3, and this mother writes to us and said, "My 3-year-old is suddenly talking to me about friction." And we'd
Wow.
done a whole show, and they were entertained,
Yeah,
and they got this as a sign. They weren't watching it to see her learn about friction. They were getting being entertained, and that duh. I mean, think of all the things. Some of the things the educational. I mean, shows that entertain us as
yeah,
grown-ups that we've learned about. Learn things by
yeah,
watching. Even police shows.
yeah.
You learn about how different justice systems work and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting about the Magic School Bus, I think similar to Fraggle Rock, really, is that when it rebooted, I think it was even though the animation style wasn't too dissimilar to the original, I think that that still had a success. Why do you think that the legacy was enough for it when it did come back? It was still you could still feel that the energy of the original was still bouncing around it in the newer version.
Because a lot of us who worked on the original version were working on the newer version.
Yeah,
So we were, hoping to make that be the case, that it would still have the and okay, the original Miss Frizzle was Lily Tomlin,
yeah,
who was a brilliant Miss Frizzle. She loved it. But Kate McKinnon did the new Miss Frizzle, who when she first was in our first recording session, she said to us, "I've always wanted to do the frizz."
yeah,
And when a voice actor of that caliber says that to you, or an actress of that
mm,
caliber, it's like, whoa, okay. It's just also the feeling of all the people
yeah,
working on it,
yeah,
right? And the commitment. And we also, we worked with scientists on
mm,
everything we did. And there's a group now called the Science and Entertainment Exchange, which
yeah,
we didn't have in the old days, and they're a group it's under the Science Academy. They have a, I don't know, a database of like
yeah,
2,000 scientists who make themselves available
yeah,
to entertain, so that you don't get the science wrong,
yeah,
right? So that and they work for you for free. So we on the new Magic School Bus, we'd call up and say, okay, can we have somebody who's a scientist in plant communication,
mm,
somebody who knows about asteroids, whatever,
yeah,
this sort of things. And I'm telling you, Tom, I'd say 9 times out of 10, these scientists would start working with us, and now this is a
mm,
new generation of
yeah,
scientists, and there were ones that they were people that said to us, I was so happy to be asked to do this.
yeah.
I'm a scientist because of the Magic School."
Wow.
And
Yeah,
so that was for all of us in the room.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And
and
that is so there you go.
yeah, and there's a lot of I think that what's really good about TV is there's a lot of examples where in so for example an example I can find like 30 people in this is that in the world of Doctor Who there was a show called Doctor Who Confidential. Now that was all about the behind the scenes of
Right.
what the kids were watching on BBC One, and you can tell that like roughly about 30 or more people have said publicly that they were only in this industry because they saw Doctor Who Confidential. Why do you think that shows are so why do you think shows that show a new light on areas that you might not be interested in? Why do you think it's hosted a new generation into those industries that might have not guarded that many people?
Well, don't you think it's kind of the element. First of all, they already love the show, so
Yeah,
they are connected to it emotionally.
yeah,
And then it's the element of surprise. Like you say, oh, I didn't know that's how that was done.
yeah,
Or what you said also earlier, which I think is really crucial because I know as a part of BAFTA, something we're
yeah,
always working at, I didn't know I could actually do that as a
yeah,
career. And that's, you yourself, you're pursuing that exact thing,
yeah,
aren't you?
yeah,
Yes. So I think that's why. It's just if you connect through something that you
Yeah,
loved as a kid, and I think puppets really do that. When kids
yeah,
discover how they actually work and how hard it is to do them, um, yeah, then they get hooked. And I know so many puppeteers that were, hooked from the age of
yeah,
7.
yeah. And what's interesting now, I don't know if it happens in the UK because I don't think I've heard people mention it. It might do. This I might be wrong on that one, but in when you look at Sesame Street and then you look at Magic School Bus, and then having those not just people that are good at writing and to perform, but having for Sesame Street's case, having educators involved in the work and having scientists. How, from your point of view, how helpful do you think that is in the process when you're coming up with ideas or when you're working out how to make sure that not only can we do our jobs as making this entertaining good, but we can also make sure that the science or the whatever the education is as accurate to what the school curriculum is as possible.
Hugely helpful as long as the consultants, the scientists and
Mm,
educators that are working with you
yeah,
also understand the
yeah,
process of making a show.
yeah,
So when you have that, it's a magic combination. So it doesn't help if you have somebody say, "Oh no,
yeah,
you can't do it like that. That's not accurate." And you
yeah,
can, excuse me, but this is animation. Help
yeah,
us figure out how we can make it work.
yeah,
That's when it really works.
yeah,
And it's really fun, that collaboration. I
yeah.
really like it.
Yeah, and I think that when you hear about this and when you so there's a incredible I mean there's quite a lot of incredible documentaries on the topic, but the most recent one on Sesame Street and explaining that because from my point of view I wouldn't have known that there was like a writer's room with educators involved. I wouldn't have thought I wouldn't that wouldn't have ever entered my head because I would have you would have thought like oh they'd be right, but when you think about it and since I've been interviewing a lot of people I've learned more about the fact that horrible histories, which
Oh,
is
I
a
love
similar
that.
thing. They've got the not just your performers and your comedy writing, but also have their historians that well
Absolutely.
in front of it. And I think that you can see that in the final product. Do you think that that's what helps in that fact is that not only is it
Absolutely.
incredible behind the scenes, it's just when you watch it going, A, I've made that happen, and B, it's incredible because it's educating the viewers, but not just shouting the facts down the throat.
Yeah, it gives it an authenticity, and it's that collaboration, as we've been talking about,
Yeah.
between education and entertainment.
Yeah.
But people don't appreciate how hard it is to do properly,
Mm.
because it's no good having a show, and like you say, and then all of a sudden people start listing facts.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, yeah, nice adventure. Stop it for a second while
Yeah.
we list all the facts. No, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't engage. It's that combination.
Mm.
And so, and I mean, I love horrible histories, and that, first of all, when I watch it, I think, yeah, no, this is real. I'm not
Yeah.
worrying about, fake news. It's
Yeah.
all, it's all,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah.
And also, you get the feeling that the actors and the writers have
Yeah.
really enjoyed the material too.
Yeah.
So,
And and I think that with the case of horrible issues, because it's still on now for the young kids, but there's enough older people to have hung around in the original world. So what I really love seeing is when and this was quite a few years ago now, is when you're walking around the corridor and you walk past the history classroom and you see the watching horrible histories and you
or
can and you know because what's good about it is that the music is rememberable. So if you ask historians or people that are studying GCSE history, a lot of them have said, and parents have said, that they watch horrible histories because that music gets to them. There's adverts now about, I can't remember what it's about, but where this woman watched someone rap about mitosis, and she's singing it to herself in the exam. And I think that that's what horrible histories has done for those people. If you're thinking about, if you have to remember all the kings and queens,
yeah.
it's even though it might take a while for you to remember because there's a lot, but once you've got it, it's never going to leave your brain. Do you think that's why music in a lot
It's
of
a
these
big
shows
difference.
also
Oh
is
yeah,
helpful?
absolutely. And in fact, that's one of the people that was originally working on Sesame Street
Yeah,
back in the day when they were questioning themselves, back in the late 60s. And the people that were putting it together were thinking, can we actually educate kids um, with television? And
yeah,
then one of the people that was involved in it, he came in when his grandchild
yeah,
came and she sang a jingle, an
yeah,
advertising jingle to
mm,
him. And he was why couldn't you just sing the
yeah,
same thing, but with just like you're saying, but with
yeah,
ABC, So that hugely important always.
yeah. And on that same note, as you mentioned at the beginning, which is what I like to call full circle moment, what what was it like developing in a sense of from a different angle of it, developing a magazine version of Sesame Street? How was that different from when trying to work out how to make sure that it has the heart of the show, but also conveys easy for the kids to
Okay.
digest?
So we were focusing on print literacy
Yeah.
because these are kids that don't know how to read.
Mm,
And so there was a lot of research, and we were working with a researcher who knew a lot about it.
yeah.
So he would be working with us, and we would test every episode, every issue of the magazine because you
Yeah.
didn't because it was that was really I loved that. It was really fascinating
Yeah.
because a kid could look at a yellow circle in the sky
Yeah.
and not necessarily think it was the sun.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? So we would go, whoa, and then I've told this story before, but my favorite was when we had this double page spread about buffaloes. And so
Yeah.
there was a buffalo. You saw the picture of the buffalo on the
Mm,
plane. And we would first of all ask the kids questions just about the drawing, not giving them the
yeah.
instructions that were written, but we would also test that to make sure they were clear. But okay, so I remember asking this kid, and these kids lived in New York. This is in New
Yeah.
York City. Where do buffaloes live? And he went, Brooklyn. Because that's the only place he'd seen a lot of
Yeah.
green. And I thought that, so that was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the kid's experience? That's where we are. And then the other thing that just with Sesame Street magazine was having a double page spread, bunch of stuff on the page. In the corner was Count Von Count.
Yeah.
So a kid doesn't know how to read, doesn't know anything, looks and starts to count things.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that is so powerful. So that was what we were working on, a print version of the
Yeah.
show, but taking into consideration what print literacy and
Yeah.
how kids knew, they didn't know to go from the right to the left, all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Sorry, left to the right. That was all that kind of thing. I still
Yeah.
don't know how to read. No, I do.
Yeah.
All that, all the
Yeah.
kind of thing that you wouldn't think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what's interesting, you mentioned the count, and what I really like about the count, not only is it because you can see three bats go three bats, ha ha ha, it's because it's making like vampires less
Yeah.
scary, and I think that it sort of softens horror, if you will. So it like enters people more likely to watch horror when they're older because they've had a softer memory. Do you think that that's also helpful because it makes people less scared of these fictional creatures?
Well, I think they discovered, kids are scared of monsters.
Yeah,
So what did Sesame Street have? A bunch of monsters.
yeah,
Grover, Cookie Monster, and then you really took away that fear of
yeah,
monsters.
yeah,
Whether or not I don't like vampire films, I don't care what you say. I
yeah,
love the Count, but no, it didn't. It didn't soften my opinion about
yeah.
vampire films.
Yeah, and I think that if you compare the Count to some vampire films, Vampire Circus, you can definitely tell that the Count's a lot more friendly than a vampire that can go through
Yes,
mirrors.
definitely.
Very questionable. And I think that what's interesting about Sesame Street is a sense of you can have those characters and they work everywhere. So if you, for example, you can have them on like a talk show or a
Yeah.
chat show. My favorite is when you have when you brought Elmo over to the UK and had him in the massive Furchester Hotel because it made it funnier because the fact that he then went on to Good Morning Britain and was discussing the fact that he really doesn't like being away from the hotel. But then at the same time, because at that point I don't think Sesame Street was on British TV. Elmo could also be hanging around on the street at the same time as serving someone. And I think that it made it more funnier because you can then, as an adult, go, has he got like a double twin? And then you can start just making up stories in your own head of his twin that's kidnapped his name and moved to the UK.
Are you going to
And
be writing kids' TV? I think you
yeah,
should
yeah,
think
sure.
about that.
And one of the things that happens a lot in TV in general, but I think that it's really interesting when it occurs on children's TV. But what's the process like when you get the opportunity to adapt a popular
Um,
children's book into TV?
Okay, so then that's the yeah, I have had a bit of experience with that, and that's
Yeah,
but that's the wanting to work with the author if you
yeah,
can, and just understand what the essence is of what they were trying
yeah,
to get across, and so then that you don't undermine it anyway by the stories you tell
yeah,
on TV. And so it's the Allbergs working with them on Funny Bones,
yeah,
and Catherine Hollibird on Angelina Ballerina. It's just if you can work with the authors, that's the best
yeah.
way to do it.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at the books for Funny Bones, my favourite bit of the fact is that the artwork is exactly the same, and I think that that's what captures the thing. If you look at like I don't know some books that might have a really out there artwork, and you're thinking, well, that doesn't scream what I imagine it would look like. I think that with Funny Bones, it worked so well. Do you think that that's what makes a successful book adaptation? Is that if there's illustrations in the original work to make it as close as
Oh yeah,
possible, but also
don't you?
still make
Oh
the
yeah,
animation smooth.
I do think so, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not a it's not jarring,
yeah,
and you're not feeling they're trying to do something different.
yeah.
So I do.
And I think it's similar when you look at like Tracy Beaker having those animated sections are so close to what the original books did. It makes you go, well, yes, it's live action. Yes, you're gonna get something different out of it, but you're also gonna get the familiarity of that's what Tracy Beaker like in the books.
Well, to be fair, I also Magic School Books that started out as
Yeah,
books. That was comic books, wasn't it? It was books, yes. And so we again keeping the same, got a
yeah,
lot of ideas from them and keeping the keeping the same feel.
yeah,
And and but then we had television and we could do so much more because
yeah,
when when the school bus goes into a somebody's insides,
yeah,
it's different when you're seeing it animated than when you're just looking at pictures, isn't it?
yeah. And I think that you sort of get to grips with the characters. What I really like about TV, sometimes when you don't know that there's a book Adam, it's originally from a book. I think the best bit is you love the TV, then reading the books, you get something else out of it. You get a third dimension. So if you're really into Game of Thrones and you like the fact that someone's stabbed someone else, but then you read about it, you get a closer, more in-depth
Yeah.
look at that, and you enter the world. Do you think that that's what also is good about TVs? Because if the kids have never read the books, they'll want to read the books because they want more of this thing. They want it now, and there's like 30 odd books in the series, and go, oh, I can
Yeah.
enjoy it right now.
You said it exactly. And so if TB can take you to books,
Yeah.
yay! I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
And what do you think that from your experience and from your array of work, what do you think makes a good theme tune? Why do you think that do you think that having a good theme tune is equally as important as having a good narrative in the show itself?
Oh yeah. But then when you think about the Sesame Street theme tune, it's
Yeah,
such a weird one to have become. It's because we've heard it for so many
yeah,
times, but it's a very strange theme tune. I like it because it
yeah.
has all sorts of different, where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good theme tune.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that with Sesame Street, you can easily adapt it. So over the years, you've got the lyrics, and they work so well with different tunes and different melodies. It's like if you think of the Blue Peter theme tune, if you work out what is the essence of it, what's the original note that people make you think of what the program is, and then take it to new heights, you still have the essence of where that theme tune has come from, but you also have what elements of music are kids listen to. If you listen to the top 10 in the chart, what is the key instrument used there? How can we make it? Do you think that that's why not only has Sesame Street lasted so long, but also the theme tune is still stuck to its original ethos?
Yeah. I mean, that's a terrible way to answer this lovely question. You took ages to ask, and then I just go, yes, yes, I do think it
Yeah,
makes, and also just the caliber of musicians and the people that are composing them, these theme tunes, all that.
yeah. And with having this roster of experience and with us getting into this interview and people getting to know you more, from your own personal experience, for anyone that's watching, what advice would you give them to be able to enter the children's market in this industry?
Oh, good. That's a good question. First, what advice? I guess watch a lot of kids' TV, watch what's out there, and watch it with kids, particularly if you can. Even after all the years that that I've been working in it. When I watch something with my grandkids, makes all the difference in the world, and you see things that you never would have seen.
Mm,
And then it's like, and then from there,
yeah.
it depends on what it is you might want to do. If you want to write, it's there's opportunities to try, to try to meet people who are writing and to get somebody to read, which it's all it's hard. I'm
Mm,
not saying this is easy, but
yeah.
if you really want to do it, we need people who really want to do it in this industry.
Yeah. And from for anyone that's watching this now and are really interested in your career, what upcoming projects have you got that you're excited for people to see, hear, or read?
Thank you very much for giving me that nice segue into my what I call my third act heart project,
Yeah.
which is a project called the Water Rubas.
Mm,
And so the thing that's interesting about this to me is it's a combination of everything I've done,
yeah.
because it's got creatures who have been designed by Brian Froud, who actually designed the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth in the back in the day. So he
Yeah.
and I have been working with them up as for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Um, but it's about the water rubas are a group of creatures. I wouldn't. They're not even characters.
Mm,
That they are water. They came to
yeah.
the planet 4 billion years ago. I won't go through the whole thing. But what happens is we meet them through a human girl, Miriam, who discovers she can turn into
Yeah.
water, and so she can travel the planet. Okay, so here we have when I first got this idea that I wanted to do this, I wanted kids to love water. So
Yeah.
how do you do that? So first of all, I went through several years. I've been working on this for ages.
Yeah.
Several years of research on water because I wanted to be sure, just like we've been saying, I didn't want to misinform kids. I
Yeah.
wanted to know, I worked with scientists, blah, blah,
Mm,
all that. And then eventually um, and then I decided I was going to do the whole thing as TV. And I developed and brought together a group of my nearest and dearest collaborators. And we just took the whole thing apart and put it back together again. And it was going to be television.
yeah.
And and it's one thing if I thought I could travel to LA and pitch something,
Yeah.
but on a Zoom screen, I did not want to do it.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to turn this into novels
Mm,
for 9 to 12-year-olds. Tom, did I know how to write a novel for a 9 to 12-year-old? No, I'd been writing television. It's very different.
yeah.
So I learned. And the first book came out in November of 2024. I've got
Mm,
a very small independent publisher, so it's available on Amazon.
yeah.
That my It's too bad it's not available in bookstores, but that's just how it is because this publisher is my friend and said I'll publish it.
Yeah.
So then you go with it. And the second book is going to come out in it's two books: Wateruba's book one,
Yeah.
and then cleverly titled The Wateruba's Book Two.
Yeah.
And that comes out in March.
Yeah.
So I'm really, it's been a really, first of all,
Yeah.
vertical learning curve for me, keeps you young. And but also, as I said, it's been the combination of everything I've learned over my career. So
Yeah.
if anybody's interested, go get the Wateruba's book one,
Yeah.
and then book two will be out in March, I think. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to know from your listeners what they think.
Yeah. And you mentioned there the word creature, and that crops up a lot in Jim Henson's work. Why do you think that creature is the best description of what Jim Henson has created in his whole body of work?
Well, that is a really interesting question because creature covers everything.
Yeah.
He doesn't do, yes, they're characters, but that gives you a different idea of what that means. A creature can be a Skeksis, from the Dark Crystal,
Yeah.
or some of the weird things he's done. He had
Yeah.
on the whole Muppet Workshop, all
Yeah.
that. But and let's face it, Gonzo,
Yeah.
he's a creature. It's not like he's a fuzzy character, but he is a character
Yeah.
because he's so I think that's a really interesting question. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we draw this interview to a close, I'd like to draw people's attention not just to the fact that Dark Crystal is brilliant, but also to the fact that the Dark Crystal bloopers that the Netflix release are hilarious because you know that the because people by that point know that the people voicing the characters are all in studio elsewhere and they're all like Simon Pegg, but then you get the puppeteers to have a whale of a time and it's the best one is where I think it's one of the production crews walking, and he's getting to whatever he's doing, and then all the Skeksis, if I can say the word,
That's
all crawl up to try and scare him, and he's like, "Ooh!" or some of them are just sat there around a ring of fire just playing the guitar singing.
So
But
is
then
that based on all the bloopers that happened when they were doing the new one for
yeah.
Netflix? Yeah.
So when they
I
did the
haven't seen
Netflix
that. Thank
TV,
you. I'll
when
have a
they
look
did
at
the
that.
Netflix TV series, it was
Yeah.
because of all the puppeteers were also performing them to make sure that
Yes.
when the voice actors did it, it was as natural as possible. Because then the voice actors knew, oh, that's how the puppeteers interpret it. Let's try and replicate it to a similar sort of feel. And there was enough evidence of them all mucking about for ages. And it just makes it more fun because then you watch the show and go, "That's incredible." I'm like, that's a lot of money, and I can sort of see why Netflix have gone. I don't think we could do more because it looks so expensive and beautiful. But then also you watch the bloopers and go, "I just want to see that for 4 hours."
Yes.
And I probably have seen it for 4 hours on a loop. Because it's just funny because you once you know who the puppet because it's like the creme de la creme of
Yes.
puppeteers. When you
Oh yeah.
watch it behind the scene, it's like, oh, I know them. Oh, I know them.
And you probably
Oh, it's him off. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
and you
yeah.
probably know all the other characters they've done too.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
puppeteers normally in a Henson production, the
Yeah.
puppeteer will do the voice.
Yeah.
It isn't, but then sometimes it gets dubbed by
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and yeah, they're pretty amazing.
It is, and it's like if you watch, well, I don't know, you can name if you watch certain things in comedy, it's the creme de la creme of comedians. They're all there, and like you can name all like the greats are all in this
Yes,
one thing, and I think that that's what, uh, not just to the Dark Crystal puppetry does in general. Is once you know the behind the scenes and you learn about these people, then you know that when you see them on all these things, you know that they're supposed to be there. They're in the right place.
yes,
And do you think that the reason why shows with puppets are so successful is not just because of it's an incredible show, but it's because the puppeteers are so passionate about their field, not just performing that one character, but the whole profession.
absolutely. They are truly proper puppeteers who
Yeah,
love the craft and know it, are amazing. So talented. And so many people think, well, how hard is it? You just, somebody once described puppeteering as waggling a dolly. And I have to tell you, that was a bit of an insult to the Muppet performers.
yeah.
No, because they are creme de la creme.
Yeah, yeah, and I just think that it's not just interesting and fun to watch, but it's also like you can see the artistry in it.
Oh, God.
Every movement, not just the way the performers perform, but every movement in the design to make this thing come to life. Do you think that
Very,
helps you as a writer because you
very
can see what's happening?
Well, very good point, though, that the puppet builders and puppet designers
Yeah,
have as much to do with the performance as the
yeah,
puppeteer, and yeah, of course, it helps us with the writing. It really helps. What I like about working with puppets
yeah,
is that you can work with the puppeteers,
yeah,
whereas with an animation, that's being voiced. The drawings are all done, and then
yeah,
the voices are done, and you as the writer are not involved in that so
yeah.
much. But with particularly Fraggle Rock, when we did the original, we were on the set all the time.
Yeah,
And
and I think that when you look at like modern puppeteers and puppeteers that are prevalent, like, you've probably heard of him by now, but there's a bloke called Phil Fletcher, right?
mhm.
He's a nice fella. Met him, I've interviewed him, and I've met him in the wild, which was a nice experience because he stopped filming to have a conversation with me. Uh, I don't think the woman underneath with the lines were best pleased, but. He did what he did, but he's got that world of like, even if because a lot of people that love him now are not even the target audience anymore because they were at the time, and they now love him because it's a Hatfields can be mischievous even on Christmas Day,
Yeah,
and B it's because he's got talent in itself to create these other characters. So having a monster that just poos everywhere
yeah,
called the plot monster
yeah,
even though that sounds really childish, when you watch it, you're still laughing at it because it's
yeah,
like it's absurd.
yeah.
And you think that that's why puppeteers are beloved, not just to fans of their characters, but because in a sense because they've got the personality that you would want a puppeteer to have.
Well, they have a kind of personality that they can split into a bunch of different characters,
Yeah,
and they find bits of themselves in each of the characters that they do. Um, they're, it's a proper skill that not a whole lot of people have, I think, to
yeah,
the level that say the Muppet performers or Phil
yeah,
Fletcher have.
yeah.
So
And so there we have it. Another excellent, warm-hearted, dictionary-defining interview. Yes, it was Muppet-tastic, and other references you can point out that would have worked as a joke there. Insert joke here. And so thank you for letting me interview you.
Thanks. I really loved it, Tom. Thanks very much. It was
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. Yes, there'll be more interviews from me. And yes, it's not even February yet. So yes, there definitely is more from me. And for anyone that's unaware, why would you be unaware? I probably say it too often. I now have 33 YouTube channels because we've now got one for particular reviewing of TV. And one of my other channels that hasn't seen the light of day with stuff on it yet. The development process is ongoing and will return. You'll find out which one that is if you look very carefully and find which one has no videos. So, there we have it. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, no, I've forgotten.